Beautiful day in New York City as usual. I just got back from Arizona, a little bit tired, but I thought I'd chat with you guys and catch up on everything Avalanche and everything crypto this week. So there's, as usual, quite a lot to go through. Let me go through and touch upon the big highlight items, and then take questions and have a discussion about all the other things that are on our minds. But let me start out with the Avalanche things. So there is a new wallet. Core Wallet just introduced multilingual support for 10 more languages. I don't know how we ended up leaving Spanish out of the very first batch of languages we supported. And we had a chat about survival bias, in any case. But it's, Spanish, Russian, Turkish, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Hindi, and I forget what else was added, but we added a bunch of new support for a bunch of new languages. So if you're a speaker of one of those languages and prefer it, or you have friends who only speak those languages, Core now supports them natively. It's just a drop down on the right, very, very easy to select, and very nice to use afterwards, because Core obviously is, in my opinion at least, the best wallet experience. Why? Because it allows you to see all of your funds across multiple chains. So you end up seeing this, all your coins in multiple DeFi applications. You end up seeing all your NFTs. You don't have to go to someone's crappy little NFT marketplace. This is something that should be in your custody. And I don't think I need to drive this point home for you, because Sam Bankman-Fried already did drive it home for all of us. So you want to custody your own stuff. You don't want to be beholden to anybody else for motion on your digital assets, for keeping your assets safe, for keeping your assets in the first place. So you don't want custodians, you don't want intermediaries. This is a self-custodied wallet. Everything is yours. There is no tracking unless you elect some tracking. If you do elect some tracking, we actually don't keep track of anything other than the most basic statistics and demographics for us to be able to make the product better. We certainly don't keep track of your addresses and so forth. So it's just a great experience overall, entirely in the crypto tradition. Check it out. It's a cool product. Okay, the other big news from last couple of last 10 days was the Alibaba partnership. You may have heard of Alibaba, or you may not have, but if you didn't hear of them, they are obviously the world's number 2 biggest e-commerce firm. Think of them as the Amazon of China. Jack Ma is the fellow who founded it, and he's obviously one of the world's richest people. And this is a big deal. I don't know how else to say that this is a big deal, but Alibaba picked Avalanche as their first chain to support for their offering. So they have this offering. It's kind of like an Amazon cloud offering, and they had the entirety of all of the coins you see when you go to CoinMarketCap. I think last I checked, there were about 8,000 coins there. There are probably more than 10,000 these days. And of all of those 10,000 coins, they did not go for Bitcoin. They did not go for Ethereum. They went for Avalanche. There's a reason for that. These are not people who are plugged into crypto Twitter. These are not people who are constantly looking around thinking, oh, I don't know anything about this area. Well, let me find out what other people are saying, and then I'll make up my mind accordingly. These are not weak people. These are people who understand the tech, okay? And they're not plugged into the Western Hemisphere's little echo chamber. So they looked at the tech and they said, this right here is the one that actually holds promise for us. There's many reasons for that, many of them. But the core of it is obviously the technical innovation behind Avalanche. The consensus protocol, they understand fully. And the subnet infrastructure, they understand incredibly well. And as we get more and more subnets, people will end up needing more and more nodes spun up. And that architecture is a perfect fit for people who are in the business of helping other people spin up nodes. So they understand that the future is going to be heading in this direction. They understand that this is where the activities are going to be, and they have positioned themselves to take advantage of that and they chose us before everybody else. So Jack Ma and the biggest company in China are behind Avalanche, and so I'm really proud of that accomplishment. So, I mean, there are other ways of making your your voice heard in this space. A very common one is pay to play. You know, there are a bunch of people who pay for partnerships. There are some L1s that do this. They work. You know, another thing you can do is you can start an exchange, take people's money, use that money to use those coins, sell those coins for your shitcoin and prop up your shitcoin. That also works, right? Until it fails. So there are lots of different things you could be doing. But the right way to do this is actually to offer a technologically superior solution and to have other techies recognize that. And that's exactly what happened. There is an interesting discussion coming up on December 13th. These super sharp looking people are going to be on that chat. You know, Wilson Wu from Ava Labs, as well as a couple of people from Alibaba will be talking about the future of Web3 on December 13th, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and probably 9 a.m. Chinese time. So you know, if you're interested, tune in. Should be great. But if not, just sit it out and just watch the magic happen, because there is a new world coming of lots and lots of parallel blockchains, and you know who's bringing it to you. Okay, so there was also another release just 2 days ago while we were at this retreat with the tech crowd at Ava Labs. There was we also did a release at the same time. This one has some minor optimizations. It does some peer list optimization. So when the nodes talk to each other about who else is in the system, when they're gossiping, that gossip is a bit more efficient. There are a couple of minor things like uptime tracking for subnets, which is useful if you want to build a subnet of your own. You want to make sure that the validators in your subnet are properly accounted for and properly rewarded for being up. And so there are some updates to uptime tracking for subnets, and there is some chain data directory for VMs. And I think prior to this one in Banff 2 or so, we also added VM to VM communication. So one virtual machine can query the state of another virtual machine. So in your subnet, you can ask questions and say, hey, does this person have this particular NFT? If so, I will give him a discount. If not, I won't. Or if so, I will let him do something. If not, I won't. Or whatever else you might want to do. So those kinds of things are now possible. And finally, let me end on this BTC front. I think you all know about BTC.b. This is the bridged version of Bitcoin. So you all know Bitcoin. You can take Bitcoin, use Core, bridge it over to Avalanche. And now your BTC is on Avalanche. And you can now move that asset, BTC.b, at the speed of Avalanche, which turns out to be much faster and much more reliable than alternatives. It's certainly much more reliable than Lightning. You've certainly heard of Lightning failures, failure to route, failure to send, etc., etc. With BTC.b, there is never a failure. You want to send it? You can send it. If you've got some amount in your hand and you want to send the whole amount, you can send the whole amount. There is no route finding. There is no capacity limit. If you can hold it, all of it can be sent to any address, and the recipient does not have to be on a special network. So the addresses are all calculable, and so you can just send it to them. They don't even have to be on Avalanche. As long as you can calculate their address, which you can, then you can send it to them. When they do log into Avalanche or connect to Avalanche with Core or with any other wallet, they will see their balance. There are 1,900 unique addressees holding BTC.b. There have been 150,000 transfers of BTC.b already, and the amount of money is about $65 million. I think this is tiny. I think these are all like baby steps. Compare this to Lightning Network, which is Bitcoin's layer 2. It's like their preferred way of doing things fast. And Lightning Network has about $100 million in it. So we have about 65. I think we're behind. I think this is so much better technically that I think people will come and want to use this. And so it's going to be fun to watch this thing grow. And it is, as usual, technically far superior compared to other blockchain solutions. So let me take some questions, and let's get into sort of stuff that you guys want to find out about or want to talk about. Okay, I always need to scroll back up. So there's a question about Hashgraph. I don't want to get into Hashgraph. You know why? I said a bunch of things about Hashgraph, and then their community just jumps on you, and it's just like blah 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 blah. It's not. We did not manage to have an intelligent conversation. I stand by everything I said about Hashgraph, and I wish them the best of luck. So this is not the appropriate venue for them to come in and have me discuss their protocol. If they want me to critique their protocol, I don't really have time, but maybe some of my grad students could be hired, former grad students. They could hire them, and they can give a proper critique, an academic critique of what exactly is a shortcoming with Hashgraph. If I were a grad student today, what topic would you study? What a great question. I was thinking about this just the other day. Is blockchain consensus still a burning, non-niche topic to research? That's a great question. I was thinking about this. I often think about this. I'll tell you guys why I often think about this, actually. It's a long story, but I'll tell you the story. So when I went to Princeton a bazillion years ago, there was a fellow there. I met a fellow along with all the other foreign students. There's this guy from Switzerland. His name was Alexei Indri Santana. And Alexei was this, good-looking guy with lots and lots of curls. Like, this is going to be important later on. Curly blonde hair from Switzerland, and Alexei, unlike everybody else at Princeton, Alexei had not gone to high school. He was self-educated. And there was a little booklet, there's everybody posing, you pose for your high school picture. So everyone's posing for their high school picture. They're looking great. Alexei's picture was a selfie back in the day when, back then people weren't really taking selfies. And certainly the homeschooling thing hadn't taken off. So the fact that this guy was entirely schooled on his own, was entirely self-educated, was an amazing thing. So, so roll forward a tiny bit. There were a couple of weird things about Alexei. So one of them was when French was spoken, he kind of looked a little glassy-eyed. Like, he would always look away. He didn't look like he understood what was being said. And he kind of started walking away. And people would be like, don't, let's not speak French or whatever. It reminds him of his mother who passed away. So let's not talk about it. So we didn't do that. The other thing about Alexei was that he was in my physics class, which was a very hard physics class, and he was acing it without effort. He was in a math class much harder than the one I was in, and he was acing that. And also another red flag, he was a long distance runner, and he was great at long distance running. So, so this guy was like the hero on campus. Everybody, like the guys wanted to be him, and the women, of course. He was having a lot of fun, let's just say, in college. So fast forward 3 more years, suddenly he gets a coveted internship at Goldman Sachs. He cuts his hair off, and then he shows up to Princeton, to a school, and someone looks at him and says, "Hey, you're not Alexei Indri Santana. You're this guy that came to my high school, pretended to be a high school student, and competed in track events way back when in Utah. I think your name is James Hogue." It turns out this guy was an imposter, right? And so this woman called him out. FBI was called in. There was a massive fraud case. He then was taken to jail. It turns out he wasn't 18 years old. He wasn't, when he showed up, he wasn't 18 years old. He was not from Switzerland. His mother did not pass away. He's just a guy from Utah. He was in jail for stealing bike parts, and he was bored. He took his own picture, made up his own application. And, when you yourself are writing your recommendation letters, it's a lot easier to get into a school like Princeton. Anyhow, so that's how he got in. And there he was. And he had, he'd already gone through college. So going back now, then rather, it was a lot easier for him. He knew all the math. This is the second time for him. He knew all the physics. He knew everything there was to know. Like he was repeating everything. And anyway, it's a very long story. I won't bore you to death. You can look him up on the internet. I think his Wikipedia page only has a subset of his con man life. He's done a lot more. Just to complete the story, he went to jail for some period of time I had a pretty nice scholarship from Princeton. He had an even better one than mine, and I was like, I didn't think it was possible, but it was apparently possible. I still had to work, I had to like work in food services and so forth, and then like show movies and so forth when I was a student. This guy didn't have to work at all. He had 100% of his way paid. So I didn't think that was possible. They told me it wasn't, but they made it possible for him. Anyway, this is Alexei's story. Then it turns out he went to jail, came out, came back to Princeton, pretended to be a graduate student, was caught again, and then he went to jail again, I believe. And then now you guys might think the story is very long, which it is, and it should end, but it doesn't end here. So these fraud people, they do fraud for life, like Sifu. They don't stop, right? Like these are just career accomplishments for them. So if you have fraud in your DNA, you'll never work it out. And I mean this for Sam, and I mean it for all of the Sam coins as well. Once that fraud is in the DNA, it isn't coming out. If you're fluffing up your TPS numbers, you're going to fluff up every other number. So all of those, anyway, that's a sideshow compared to my main story. So he goes to jail again after pretending to be a grad student, comes back out of jail, finally gets a proper job. This time it's no longer affiliated with Princeton. He has decided to move to Boston. He's gotten a job at Harvard, and he's now working at a special place at Harvard. And I didn't know this until the news broke out. Apparently, Harvard used to have this phenomena where you're like an old lady in Boston or whatever, and you're about to pass away. You give away all of your dangly jewelry, all of your precious stuff to Harvard, and Harvard then has this place called the Harvard Uncatalogued Gem Collection, and the person they put in charge of cataloging the gem collection was none other than Alexei Santana, also known as James Hogue, or vice versa. Of course, there was a big debate about, do we call him Alexei or do we call him James Hogue? Is he the guy we know, or is he the other guy, the original guy? And are his accomplishments his? Do we look up to him still, or are they all fake? And it's very confusing, of course. And his girlfriend at the time, I cannot imagine that person could ever trust anybody else again. In any case, he got caught stealing diamonds from the Harvard Uncatalogued Gem Collection. It's a fascinating story. But the takeaway from all of this is, it puts into everybody's mind the idea that, hey, could I go back to undergrad again? And if I did, what would I do? And it's a great question. So it's worth thinking about. When I went to undergrad, my first chosen topic was actually AI, and it was a fascinating field, or it seemed like a fascinating field. I took some cog-sci courses, cognitive science courses, in my first year, and as soon as I stepped in, as soon as I looked at what the AI folks at the time in the late 80s, early 90s, what they were doing, I came away with the belief that, hey, this AI thing is going to be cool someday, but that day is not today. What we don't know how to do is how to build secure, reliable systems that always work. That was at the time the big missing piece. I believe over the last, I don't know how many, 30 years or so, that we got much better at building systems. I no longer go to an airport and see a blue screen. That used to happen all the time. I no longer go to a bank and receive something like, hey, could you please come back tomorrow? The machinery, the computer doesn't work. The systems are down. Systems are down was a very, very good excuse for a whole lot of things. When I was in college also, I couldn't do my homework. The system was down. So that's mostly gone away. And we've built much more reliable systems, but we're nowhere near where we need to be. So I still think that distributed systems as an area is incredibly exciting. And the challenges that remain in building large, self-organizing, resilient, self-healing systems that work without supervision is incredibly hard and very much open. Almost every service that you see, Facebook, Google, Gmail, Google, the search engine, anything else, you name it, whatever else that you might interact with on the internet relies on a huge number of people, all carrying little cell phones and the equivalent of pagers, an application called PagerDuty on it for sure, and dozens and dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of people tending to those machines to make sure that they remain up. So these blockchains, in contrast, they can't achieve the same performance yet, but they for sure are far more resilient. There isn't somebody running around with a little pager tending to, I don't know, the Bitcoin blockchain as of this moment. So there are some people who are tending to the Avalanche chain for sure, the Avalanche validators that we run, because we don't want to be deprived of the rewards. But the system overall does not require the level of hand-holding that you see with client-server systems. So we're getting there, but the performance is not there yet. So there's a lot of open questions on the scientific side. If I were to do this again, where would I go? I would probably go exactly where I went. I think now that I understand the field better and I understand the open scientific questions better, I think the promise in distributed systems is far more tangible and far more achievable than many other fields. Now, what are the other fields that I would look into? Nanotech is an incredibly exciting field for me that I happen to love. Robotics in general is an incredibly exciting field, although it's one of these dangerous fields. There are some fields where there are just a couple of open questions, and you know what they are. Everybody knows what they are. There are probably like 10 big questions in physics right now, and every year they come out. In distributed systems, there are about 5 open questions even as I speak. But when it comes to robotics, at least the way that field works is you pick your own question, and there are many parallel questions. And so you can just come up and put like a little bit of flair onto an existing question, make it different, and then solve it and get publications out and so forth. So it's a field with a lot of bifurcation, with a lot of division and spread. And so that's a different kind of a game. That's not the kind of game I like to play. I like to play games where the questions are clear, the winning criteria are clear, and everybody knows what the questions are. And then you come in and you can ignore, there's always going to be some people who will play with the numbers, the metrics, etc. But you ignore those. The good people know each other, and then the good people take stabs at solving the big problems. So I like those. So I would pick distributed systems over say robotics. But nevertheless, robotics has some big fundamental questions that I think are really, really exciting. I'm not a huge fan of machine learning and AI. I'll just be upfront about it. I know this is the time of ChatGPT. I've seen all of the results. They are incredibly impressive and quite amazing. It's just not my kind of an area, my kind of a field. It's very, very, very occupied. Everybody and his brother wants to touch that field. And sure, you can go into it, but you'll be one of many millions, most of whom are taking black box results, applying them in some small ways. And the people with an edge are the people who are sitting on enormous mounds of training data. So not exactly my game. I don't have to be beholden to Google or employment at Google to get my work done. So I wouldn't necessarily pick that one. So I know that's a controversial opinion. I have a lot of friends. I know I offended all of them now. So this weekend's going to be a little tough for me, guys. But that's what I think about this. So power to them. I very much respect the work they do. I'm not saying that it's not scientifically interesting, et cetera, but it's just not for me. It's just too crowded a space, and the techniques required, the problems are a little too niche, I think. In any case, so what else? One bit of advice to people that I usually give who ask this question is to pay attention to how reusable the skills are in your chosen field. For example, when I was a kid, many countries, and including the one in which I grew up, were betting on electrical engineering. Okay, and electrical engineering is a great field. It's a fine field. You know, I got my degrees. I have an engineering degree myself. In undergrad, I could have gotten a science degree. I got an engineering degree, so I know how to build a radio. I built a radio. I know how to build, you know, analog devices and so on. And there's a whole bunch of them, you know, standing around me even as I speak. It's my hobby, etc., etc. So I say this as someone with a fair bit of double E background. The skills that you pick up in double E, like fast Fourier transforms, time domain transformations, and so on, they are amazing. They're amazing by themselves, intellectually very, very exciting things. And they have great application within the field of electrical engineering. But if you decide not to work in that field, they're not transferable at all. So there are many countries with huge surpluses of electrical engineers who then go on to do MBAs, because there's, you know, what else are they going to do with a fast Fourier transform? You can't really solve all that many problems other than building radios or building TVs or whatnot. So pay attention to that. If you're a systems person, your skills are immediately transferable to anything and everything else, to building software, large software systems of all kinds. If you are a computer graphics person, your skills are transferable, yes, but not as much, I would say. They tend to pertain to matrix manipulations, large matrix data, which is very, very general, let's be clear. But I would say perhaps not as general as being able to build large-scale software systems. So, you know, so you should pay attention to that, at least in my super humble opinion. I'm probably wrong on all of these, so take it with a huge grain of salt and with a huge understanding of my own biases. So I'm not saying that these are universal truths. It's just how I think of this space. So, non-niche topic to research. Yeah, so I think distributed systems, there's a lot. Oh, consensus. I think the consensus problem is essentially, well, it's still open. It's still open. But the biggest breakthrough in it was Avalanche, and there's a lot more to come after Avalanche. And so there is still, or rather, there's still some more to come after Avalanche. But I think that something really funny happened in my area, which is, all of the academics had these blinders on, and they were going down a certain path, and they were not aware of their own biases. And then suddenly the blockchain area came and crept up on them and completely blindsided them. And now there's a lot of scrambling that you hear and see everywhere you look. They're gloating right now because of the crash in crypto, but there's an undeniable fact that people are building large-scale Byzantine fault-tolerant systems. Practitioners are building them that academics could not. Many academics could not. So it's kind of funny. And there's still more to do. And I think we are now practically far ahead of where we were, let's say, about 10 years ago. So starting with Satoshi, huge progress has been made. And there's still more to come, especially down the Avalanche path. There might also be more to come down the classical consensus path. Maybe you could improve upon hot stuff. Hot stuff was invented by Ted Yin, who's my student, Ted Yin and colleagues, of course. Ted Yin was my student, is my student, or was my student. He graduated now, and he's also co-founder of Ava Labs and co-inventor of the Avalanche Consensus Protocol. So there's more to do on top of hot stuff, perhaps, but there's certainly a lot more to do on top of Avalanche in terms of improving it, and that's exactly what we're working on. So how is the sentiment developing with KKR? Whoa, that's a great question. So I haven't actually checked. I've been too busy, and today is one of those days when I just, like late last night, I arrived from Arizona. We were all together working on some technical workshop, and so I haven't had a chance to check in a while, actually. But they are super happy, and I don't want to leak too much alpha, but there's more in the works, is all I can say. So the KKR, I should come back to you guys with numbers on what's happening with KKR. I think the sale is actually happening even as we speak. So there is no final results from that entire operation yet. But certainly on the KKR side, there's appetite and interest in doing far more with blockchains. So I'm really happy about that. So how confident am I? I don't know who's asking this. It's like typically what happens is people ask these deep questions, and with strategic bits of information in them, I answer them, and then lo and behold, one of our competing, or people who think they're competing with us, end up doing a little stunt squarely on top of something that I said was good, that we were going to do. So it's okay, but let me answer this question. How confident am I that we'll do more with KKR? 1000%. They're here, we're here, and even if they don't do the next thing with us, the next thing, who are they going to go to? They're going to go to Sam? No. Are they going to go to a Sam coin? Maybe, but I think they have better sense than that. So who's in this field and can help them and actually provides the kind of performance that they need? That's us, and the infrastructure that we need. Okay, so can I retweet your tweets? No, I cannot generally endorse people or blanket promise to endorse anybody. So if I end up retweeting things, occasionally I do this, but it's always dangerous. People then get upset. I once said that Avax tree. I like the art in Avax trees. That's exactly what I said. And Avax Trees turned out to be a rug pull kind of an NFT project. And then everybody got very upset at me. It's like, I bought Avax Trees because you said they were cool or whatnot. And all I said was, I like the art. I bought Avax Trees too. And, I still hold them because I like them. And I bought enough. I bought, more and more and more until I got the art that I liked and bought it. So anyhow, so it I'm not sure. Is this working? It might be working again. So yeah, I cannot do blanket endorsements. If you come to me with a project and I understand what the project is and I know who the people are and it sounds sound, then yes, I can and sometimes do. Do I think that the FTX scandal will delay institutional adoption? Yes, it will. It does. It's even as we speak, things have slowed down a lot, and as well they should. I don't even feel bad about what's happening. The field has to be cleared. There was an enormous mispricing in the market. There was an enormous amount of attention paid to a bunch of dead-end projects. Those projects were being held up, not by virtue of their own technical strength, not by virtue of organic support, but because some jackass was taking your money, your coins, and selling them to prop up those other ones. And that was the value proposition. And people bought into it. We all made that mistake. We saw it happen, and there wasn't much any one of us could do. I know, people who are listening to me here are obviously not part of this huge episode. But it all happened, and now we kind of need to all go back. We all need to take a step back and cleanse this crap out of our system. I am furious at the regulators, at law enforcement, for not putting this guy in an orange jumpsuit. He needs to be in jail. What happened here is clearly fraud, so clearly fraud. So I don't know what else to say about this. The sooner we get to healing and the recovery, the quicker we get back to business as usual, business as normal. I think it's going to take a few more months, maybe one more, but early next year, I expect everything to recover. What have been some of the most impressive computer science extracurricular activities you have seen from high schoolers applying to Cornell? That's a great question. So Cornell is unusual. So in the sense that, all these other schools typically have dedicated staff for admissions. So Princeton, Harvard, et cetera, they have all of the admissions are done by professionals whose only job is to admit students. At Cornell, they do something different, which is to do the following. Every single packet is reviewed by a dedicated professional plus a faculty member. So faculty are intimately involved in admissions at Cornell, as was I. It's a rotating duty. It's very, very, very taxing, very, very hard stuff. But for one year, back in 2000 and I don't know when, 2009, 2010, thereabouts, I was responsible for admissions from the Chicago and Detroit area and the hinterlands. So, Midwest. If you applied, if you're from the Midwest, from those regions, and applied to Cornell in 09, in 2010, then there's a chance that I looked at your packet. I mean, there are many others, of course. There's so many applicants. There are many other faculty members who did it. But I managed to see a whole lot of student packets, and it's amazing. It's amazing what people do. I ended up looking at the arts and sciences applications, not at the engineering applications. So I ended up seeing things like people who built their own scanning tunneling microscope, which is a doable thing these days, but incredibly impressive. And I ended up seeing, you end up seeing all sorts of really impressive resumes. I ended up seeing the resume of a drama kit, for example, and it's got nothing technical in it. It's just a hell of a lot of plays that this fellow played in, and it was very impressive. I remember that distinctly. For privacy reasons, I don't think I can get into anything more specific than this high level. But yes, I have seen some amazing things that people did. But let me also say that as someone who was judging these things, you always have to bear in mind the role that the parents played, and you always have to denominate everything by the background of the student. So there were some stellar students who did not do any of these things, but they came from a background where they really stood out. And so I was supremely positive for many of them. So, when you're, I don't know what, you're like an hour out of Detroit, you're not going to have a great science set of science opportunities. Your science teacher is not going to be somebody who really motivates you. So to see that level of motivation coming from within, even if the student ended up doing something, that pales in comparison to what a more privileged student did, that counts for a lot in my book. So I hope that's useful. That's sort of what I have to say on that topic. I could get into much more detail, but then it will end up doxing the students who applied, and then they'll get upset at me. So I think I need to be careful there. What have been the most impressive computer science extracurricular activities? So I wasn't into reviewing the computer science applicants. I was reviewing the science, the arts and science applicants, and I ended up seeing some of the kinds of things they did. Hope everyone is doing well. Yes, we hope the same for everyone. AVAX Summit for 2023. Yes, I just authorized the web page to be built for this thing. You need time to arrange travel. It's going to be in early May, so pencil some time in early May, and it's going to be, I should shut up there because I don't know what we really signed off on. So let me promise to you that we will get something out in the next 2 weeks. Now, before the calendar year turns, I will get something out that says, hey, the dates and the place are as follows. But tentatively, the date is first week or second week of May. So let's see. I hope that's useful. What type of performance improvements we should expect to see on the EVM? You should expect to see E++ VM. You should expect to see something entirely different. We are using a lot of code developed by Get at the moment, and very super high respect for that team and what they've built. But there is so much that one can do differently. So that starts at every level: the database management level, the database itself, the way the data is laid out, the way the data is recalled, the way the data is cached, followed by the execution side, the way the code is kept, the way the code is executed. So there is a lot that could change, and we have people working on what we call the E++ VM internally. That's not going to be its name when it comes out, but we're working on building a far faster EVM. So what year should we expect this to happen on the C chain? Next year, 2023. So this work has been going on for at least a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years, about a year and a half, I would say, a year and a half. And so it's going to come out next year. Yes, there have been some technical difficulties on our side. Yes, my Mac somehow, things either just work on the Mac or they just don't work, and there's no in between. And they were just not working this morning. I apologize. Okay. Why do they need? Yeah, why does everyone seem to think Ethereum is still the best smart contract chain? Because they're the first movers. The first mover advantage is huge, and kudos to Ethereum for blazing the path. But if you look at what it has done since then, there's no comparison, right? So they did a big switch to proof of stake, which is something that needs to be lauded. That's fantastic. It's not an easy thing to do. Compare that, but what did they really change to? They changed to an algorithm that's very similar to EOS, very similar to just about every other, run-of-the-mill proof of stake algorithm. After all that heart-wrenching discussion, after all of that effort that went into VRFs, then VDFs, then accumulators, then everything else, we're back to, oh, hey guys, we'll just copy EOS. So Avalanche is far ahead of that, and we bring that same sensibility to everything else we do. And it takes time for people to internalize that. Hey, this is where technical innovation is happening. And there are many other things we need to do differently. I think I promised to everybody that at Ava Labs, at least the teams I control, will try to be more open in their development. To their credit, Ethereum is incredibly public in its discussions. And so, I find it a little bit infuriating personally. It's just a lot of discussion that's going nowhere, a lot of discussion that seems to be built around bad frameworks, and it's kind of hard to fix. But it is what it is. But it is inclusive, at least. So they do that really, really well. And so there are many lessons for us to learn from that community, of which I actually used to consider myself a part. I still consider myself a part of it. So they're doing great stuff on that front, and they have a lead. And it's going to take time for anybody else coming up with better technology to catch up and surpass. So, but that's exactly what we're doing. So let's see. Avalanche is still not known by many in the blockchain space even today. That's right. Oh, yeah. So this is an answer to the previous question to Christian. Yes, we need to do a better job of marketing ourselves as well. So it's well known that, companies, efforts, projects, they typically take on and grow along the strengths of their founders. So, it's very clear what's happening with Avalanche. The strengths of our effort are technical. We're far, far beyond everybody else in this space. Just look at our platform, the way it introduced a genuinely new consensus protocol. Everybody else said the same thing. We're introducing a new consensus protocol. No, you're not. None of you were introducing a new consensus. Well, if you were introducing something new, it's a tiny minor addition. We introduced an entire new family of consensus protocols. It's a huge breakthrough. So we did that. Then we followed on with the bridge. Our bridge has not been hacked. There's a reason for that. And our bridge is the fastest and cheapest to use. There's a reason for that. It is number one in TVL. There's a very good reason for all of those things. Then look at Enclave. We again introduced new technology to markets. Sam could not have done any of the things he did had he been forced to use something like Enclave underneath. So that's that. There's Core, the wallet experience. Everybody's building a wallet. They all look pretty much the same and kind of boring. That Core wallet is different. It's worth checking out. And so we're innovators. But what we're not is we're not very good at touting our own accomplishments and doing marketing. So that's something that I want to fix in the coming year. It is my top priority, actually. And I'm going to take a step away from technical stuff a little bit until we improve our marketing game a little bit, because as you can see, and as people are noticing, our technical accomplishments on the ground are far in excess of our perception or people's understanding of what we do. So we need to bridge that gap. Okay, so I'm losing my voice. I'm going to stop in a little bit, but let me see what's going on here. Feasibility, usefulness of web hosting or storage subnets. Let's talk about storage subnets. There's a big problem right now with Solana NFTs. A hell of a lot of Solana NFTs were minted by FTX. The NFTs FTX minted were hosted on servers controlled by FTX, and now those NFTs no longer have their content. If you look at the URL for what the web content was going to be, you face a little page that says, because of bankruptcy proceedings, these NFTs, whatever it is, this website is under this and that. So those NFTs just suddenly lost their content. Absolute amateur time, amateur hour at the NFT game over there. So how do you avoid this? Well, this is the kind of thing that can happen on any other chain as well. It can even happen on Avalanche if people misuse it. What we need as a community is a subnet, or is a network, a chain, where people can post their content, and that content is then served to other people. And there's a lot more that goes along with it. The naive efforts to do this are going to be they're going to be open to abuse. Let's just put it that way. And you got to just get it right. So I'm really excited about that opportunity. I spent a little bit of time over the last couple of days at a workshop in Arizona with a bunch of technical people from Ava Labs and elsewhere, and we brainstormed on how to what to do, and expect that these problems will be solved in the future. I love data storage networks. We definitely need them. We absolutely need them as an area, and we generally need them not outside of crypto as well. They would be generally useful. Those of you who are saying, what's wrong with IPFS? So much is wrong with IPFS. I encourage you to use it. When you do use it, you realize how fragile it is. And what's wrong with DHTs, distributed hash tables? So they too are incredibly fragile. It's so easy for me to Eclipse attack a DHT. If you give me a DHT, it's so easy for me to crash. It's a structured DHT, I can crash it very, very easily. If you give me an unstructured one, then it's just full of trash. It's very, very difficult to tell apart the good stuff from the not so good stuff. So the world is, I think, clamoring for a good solution to storage, a peer-to-peer storage that is cheap and easy to use, that isn't Filecoin, that isn't IPFS, that's different, somewhere lower than Filecoin in terms of abstraction level, and something much more robust than IPFS, than structured DHTs. So time to think about that. Am I excited about Savvy DeFi? Don't know what that is. I think they feel that Avax's tokenomics is bad. Who's this? I don't know the context here. Yeah, so can you tell us how you felt when Bitcoin white paper was released, having invented proof of work years earlier? Okay, so yeah, I can tell you exactly how I felt when I read the Bitcoin white paper. I started reading it. Then at some point I thought, whoa, this is really cool. So it starts out small, and it starts out, hey, we're going to do this, that, and the other. And then at some point, it gets to this point where there's the proof of work idea was not new or novel. Okay, I didn't invent it. Proof of work in general goes back to Cynthia Dwork and Moni Nauer from 1991, I believe. Maybe 1992, but they published that work back in 1991. Adam Back ended up rediscovering the same idea 5 years, 6 years later, but he didn't even realize he rediscovered it. He didn't do the proper scholar search and discover Dwork and Nauer's idea. So then I did Karma in 2002, 2003, done in 2002, published in 2003. And Karma introduced the concept of minting coins based on proof of work. So that was the thing that converted proof of work into a currency. So those other systems, Hashcash, etc. Hashcash is not a currency, despite the name. It's just got a name like that. But the idea was you compute proof of work for every email you send. Okay, that's an idea. but there's no currency system, there's no chain, there's no record, there's no message log, there's no blockchain underneath. So Karma introduced the concept of minting via proof of work, but it didn't introduce the concept of consensus via proof of work. That came from the Satoshi white paper. And when I read that part, I was like, whoa, this is supremely cool. And it goes counter to everything that all of the academics were doing at the time. So what is that? Well, this is a huge body of work of classical consensus protocols. So every proof of stake system that isn't Avalanche is using that body of work. And so that body of work had been developed from, let's say, 1978 onwards. The consensus problem started getting identified in the late 70s and got somewhat solved in the late 80s, and then got solved better in the late 90s. And then everything else after that is just, it's just essentially minor modifications to the same theme, same approach. And then here is this paper, and as I read this, I was like, "Whoa, this is amazing!" He did one of the things that I did, sure, but he added another layer to it that is absolutely brilliant. So I read that part, and I was like, "Whoa, this is wonderful." Then the next thing you do, of course, and I'll be super frank about this, I think this is what many academics do, if not all of them, is you check to see if he knows of your work and if he mentioned you. So I scrolled to the end of the paper and looked at who he cites, saw that he wasn't citing my work, and I was like, that's a pity, because clearly my work predates his, and of the two things he does, one of them is invented by me. It's relevant here. So it's okay that he didn't mention it. And then the third thing that I thought, I remember distinctly thinking this was, I wonder if his claims are true. So I can see intuitively why the claims kind of make sense, but I don't see a proof for them. So that was my thought process. And this is kind of important, and I think I should talk about this a little bit. So there are many things that when we hear them, they make sense to us, right? And I'll give you some example. I'll give you a simple example from economics. Times are tough for us as a country economically. Times are tough, so our government will have to tighten its belt and reduce its spending. It's a common thing. It's I have heard this from the TV when I was a teenager. I then went to school and I learned that the economic thinking is the exact opposite. During recessions, you need to spend more to get out of a recession. So not everything that seems to make sense on the surface actually is borne out by theory. So, and the things that are the most dangerous are those nuanced things where things can go, things kind of make sense, but there are edge cases or corner cases that you don't even know that you don't know, that create a flaw in your system at the worst possible time. So it's essential that every consensus protocol come coupled with a proof of its correctness. And so my last thought as I left that paper was, there are some really interesting claims here. The approach intuitively makes sense to me. I do think that it probably is correct. Like there's something there for sure. But I wonder if there is a proof of correctness, and I wonder what the limits are to the security of a system built on this foundation. So that was sort of how I left it. Then I think maybe a year later or so, I ran into Dr. Itai Eyal. Itai was a postdoc at the time at Cornell, not working with me. He was working with a colleague of mine, but he was really interested in cryptocurrencies, and he came by and said, hey, do you know anything about Bitcoin? I hear you're interested in cryptocurrencies. I said, yes, of course I'm interested in cryptocurrencies. And he said, well, I've been thinking about the correctness of the Bitcoin approach of Nakamoto consensus. And that's how we got started thinking about and trying to reason about the claims that Satoshi made. There are claims he made that are not in the white paper, that are far more wrong than the claims in the white paper. It turned out that some of the central claims were incorrect, and that and I'll name the one. The claim that Bitcoin is incentive compatible. That is, the claim that you should do mining the way you are told, and if you deviate from the mining strategy, you will make less money. That's incorrect, demonstrably so. The claim that there is no centralization pressure, that it doesn't pay to combine forces in a Nakamoto consensus system, that's incorrect. And the claim that if a majority is honest, then Bitcoin will be protected from attacks on the consensus protocol. That's also incorrect. So those were incorrect, and we showed it using in a paper called Selfish Mining, and we provided an alternative. So you don't follow the Satoshi protocol, you follow a slightly modified protocol that will make you more money if you follow it. It's called Selfish Mining, and it received a lot of hatred initially, and it's a long story. I had death threats, lots and lots of letters to Cornell telling them to fire me. Obviously I was a tenured professor at the time. They couldn't fire me. And, lots and lots of hatred initially. And also they funded 3 different efforts to prove that what we did with Selfish Mining was incorrect. Every one of those efforts, I believe, came back, certainly the main one for sure, came back with the main person leading the effort saying, I repeated everything they did, and I got exactly the same results as them. What they're saying is correct. So, and ultimately, science is what it is. People have to, you just show them the numbers. They might not believe you at first. People are emotional creatures. But when they go and do the numbers or do the simulations, there's an undeniable truth underneath. And you could maybe delay the inevitable by a couple of years, but at some point you have to accept it. So suddenly people flipped and they said, yes, these guys are actually correct. Nakamoto consensus has these limits. No miner should be bigger than 33%, et cetera, et cetera. And they went from hating on us to inviting us to every conference. And that's sort of what happened. That was my journey with the Bitcoin white paper. I worked on a whole lot of other aspects of Bitcoin, trying to improve the security of coins at rest, characterizing the scale of the network, the decentralization of the network, and so on. Anyhow, all right, so where are we going? What's an amazing story? I have a bunch of weird stories. I collect weird stories, and usually firsthand. I used to be able to collect more weird stories firsthand when I was younger. And yes, I was at Princeton when the Alexei Indri Santana thing was happening. There are many other details to that story, by the way. Somebody should do a book on it. That Catch Me If You Can guy, he's a rank amateur compared to Alexei or James Hogue, whatever you might want to call him. I'm going to end up, let me see. Now we have 3 more minutes. Let's see what we have. Ethereum had unlimited supply, ironically, but its inflation was minimal. I'm not sure what these people are asking. I can't read a question this long, so I'm going to skip a little bit. Would you consider using the new Rust-based tools to make a Rust-based contract chain using AVAX as the native token? Yes, I very much would love to use that. And I'm super interested in that episode and that whole entire approach. And it's not me just saying this in a hollow fashion. We just released an SDK for people to write their virtual machines in Rust. So if you want to write a virtual machine in Rust and run it on the Avalanche consensus protocol, you can. We take care of all of the consensus things for you. You just essentially have to define what constitutes a state transition, what constitutes a transaction in your universe, all implemented in Rust. The beauty of Rust, of course, is it's amenable to a whole lot. Well, it's beautiful. There's that. But there's also the fact that it's amenable to machine parsing and analysis. It's a functional programming language. So it's got a lot of great things going for it. And if you want to build something in Rust on Avalanche, we greatly support it. Now, this particular question is about the level up. And there the question is, what about writing in Rust on chain? And that's a fantastic question. I am super open to that idea. There is nothing holding anybody back from doing exactly this. And in fact, we had just, again, over the last few days, we had a discussion on should we do this or should we not? And there's no outcome from that discussion. That is, the answer is yes, we should do this, but it shouldn't. I mean, the outcome was it's so much better if other people do this than if we were to do it. That is, Ava Labs were to do it. Why? Because we're already quite busy supporting the EVM chain. We have our hands full with a bunch of other things that we're doing, and a Rust-based chain, contracts written in Rust would be fantastic to see, and it's eminently doable. And I beseech you all to go and do it, and I will support you. I will retweet and support and co-market and sing your praises if you manage to get this done. It's eminently doable, right open for you. We did everything we can to make it happen for other people, but this is something for third parties. I think we would like to do new things that preferentially we would like to spend our cycles on doing things that only we can do, and this is one of those things that the community can take over. So I would love to see the community do this. I have done everything I can to provide the right platform for everyone, and so go wild. And I personally will be a huge supporter of any such effort, and I can't wait to see it. It'll be so great, so great. Get those Rust developers on, and when it comes to interoperability, rest assured that lots of solutions are coming to make that chain, the Rust chain, interoperate easily and seamlessly with the existing chains. So that's all I can say on that front. Okay. Julia's heard about this guy. Yes, I knew Alexei. Yes, I knew him because he was a foreign student, and all the foreign students had to spend an extra week hanging out together. He was a foreign student. He was foreign from Utah. So he wasn't really foreign, but he pretended to be from Switzerland. That's how I knew him. Yeah, and of course we were in the same math class, in the same physics class. Okay, I think I'm going to stop right here. If I could get 45 minutes with anyone to explain to them the real applicable value of the Avalanche blockchain technology, who would I pick? I would pick Biden. Right now, I want to pull Biden to the side and say, look, I know you've got a bunch of problems. I know that you want to create an open democratic society. I know that you don't believe in supporting only the incumbents. I know that the world where growth opportunities are limited only to those companies that have established a foothold somewhere in our lives is something that's terrible sounding to you. Then you should listen to me, and I will tell you exactly about the world that I envision and how it creates a much better world that's open and accessible to all, without the incumbents having a special position in them. And maybe he'll listen, maybe he won't, but I think I would want to talk to Biden. I've never spoken to Biden, and I think he would be my number one pick. On that note, I'm going to slow down. My voice is gone. And kind of take it, to wrap it up from here, and take it easy for the rest of the day. Thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for listening to my long and crazy story of Alexei and others. And perhaps you too should think about what you would do if you could go back to your undergraduate days and pass as an undergraduate. And if you guys come up with a good solution, maybe you and me both could go back to undergrad and provide cover for each other. I could be like, oh yeah, that's my good old friend Alexei. They're from Switzerland, and then you can say that I'm from some other place, and we can corroborate each other's bogus stories. And then I can study nanobots or whatnot, and do something entirely different. In any case, these are nice ideas. But I'm here to do what I do. I love what I'm doing blockchains, and I can't imagine doing anything else for the foreseeable future. But these are all great thought experiments. Thanks for sticking with me. Take care. Have a great weekend.